We talk a lot about Marcus Aurelius. We admire Epictetus, we quote Seneca. But what if I told you the most important Stoic of all time is someone you've probably never even heard of? He never ruled an empire. He never wrote dramatic letters or meditations to himself. His name is almost absent from popular books and social media pages that teach Stoicism today. Yet without him, the entire philosophy might have collapsed before it ever reached Rome, before it ever reached you. This is the story of Chrysippus of Soli, a long-distance runner turned philosopher, a master of logic who built a mental fortress so strong that not even centuries of criticism could break it down. While Marcus Aurelius was fighting off barbarian invasions, Chrysippus had already fought off a much more dangerous enemy, intellectual extinction. As William B. Irvine reminds us, a philosophy without a logical framework is just inspiration waiting to be dismantled. And Stoicism, in its earliest days, was dangerously close to being dismantled. It had virtue, it had passion, but it lacked armor. Chrysippus gave it that armor. He was the architect, the constructor, the engineer behind the mental engine that would one day guide emperors, soldiers, therapists, athletes, and everyday people like us. According to Anthony A. Long, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca were not inventing Stoicism. They were applying a system already designed by Chrysippus. He didn't just debate with logic. He forged it into a weapon. He didn't just describe the universe. He explained how you fit into it. He didn't just define emotions. He dismantled them. His writings, more than 700 books, are gone, burned, buried, lost to time. And yet, his ideas remain. In every Stoic quote you read, in every challenge you face, in every quiet moment when you choose reason over rage, discipline over desire, courage over comfort, that's Chrysippus speaking through the ages. This is the Stoic Lighthouse, where ancient wisdom meets modern chaos. Let the Stoic Lighthouse guide you toward peace and wisdom. If you're ready to explore the forgotten mind that made Stoicism bulletproof, hit the like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss the mental tools you're about to discover. Now let's begin by stepping into a world where philosophy was war and Athens was the battlefield. Number 1, the Athenian arena, when Stoicism faced extinction. Before the Roman emperors ever quoted Stoic wisdom, before the name Marcus Aurelius meant anything beyond a forgotten bloodline, Stoicism was bleeding out in the streets of Athens. The year is roughly 250 BC. Athens is no longer the glorious city of Socrates and Plato. It's now a brutal intellectual arena where ideas don't just compete, they fight to the death. Every school of thought is battling for dominance. The cynics ridicule social norms. The Epicureans promise peace through pleasure. The academics question the very possibility of truth, and the skeptics, they're intellectual assassins, trained to tear any theory to pieces, no matter how noble its aim. In the middle of this chaos stands a new philosophy, fragile, inspiring, and dangerously exposed. Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium, a shipwrecked merchant who rebuilt himself through reason. Stoicism preached the supremacy of virtue over circumstance. It spoke of a universe ruled by logos, divine reason. It offered hope in a world ruled by chaos. But there was a problem. While Stoicism had heart, it didn't have armor. It had vision, but not the tools to defend that vision against the relentless attacks of rivals. As William B. Irvine puts it, inspiration alone is never enough. If a philosophy cannot defend itself, it will be destroyed. Zeno's successor, Cleanthes, was a man of deep character, a former water carrier turned philosopher warrior. But even he couldn't shield the philosophy from the onslaught of logic-wielding critics. They attacked the Stoic idea of fate. They mocked the belief that virtue is the only good. They picked apart the Stoic conception of reason, freedom, and even the soul. And worst of all, they were winning. The Stoics were outmatched. They were trying to fight trained gladiators of the mind without swords, without shields, without a plan. Their ideals were noble, but their logic was soft. Every flaw was exposed, every crack was widened, and it became clear to the philosophical world, Stoicism might not survive. Ryan Holiday, in Lives of the Stoics, reminds us, the early Stoics didn't have the luxury of just living their philosophy. They had to fight for its very right to exist. And then, when all seemed lost, a young man from the distant town of Soli arrived in Athens. He wasn't a warrior or a senator. He wasn't a charismatic teacher. He was a long-distance runner, quiet, precise, focused, but behind his calm eyes was a mind sharp enough to reshape history. His name was Chrysippus, and what he brought to Stoicism wasn't poetry, it was defense, it was rigor, it was the intellectual firepower the Stoics needed to survive the onslaught. He studied the tactics of his enemies. He learned from the very skeptics who were trying to dismantle the Stoa. He infiltrated their methods, dissected their strategies, and prepared to give Stoicism what it had never had before: a logical skeleton. The next chapter of this story isn't just about ideas. It's about weapons, and Chrysippus was about to forge the sharpest blade philosophy had ever seen. Number 2. The Blade of Logic. How Chrysippus armed the Stoics. Chrysippus didn't charge into the battlefield of ideas swinging wildly. He studied, listened, calculated. Before joining the Stoics, he sat at the feet of their greatest enemies, the skeptics, not to follow them, but to understand their tactics, to learn how they dismantled philosophies not with insults, but with precision, with traps, with paradoxes. And then, when he had mastered their weapons, he turned. He walked into the Stoa not as a disciple, but as a shield. Chrysippus saw what others had missed, that in a world of intellectual predators, Stoicism needed more than inspiration. It needed defense, structure, a logical backbone strong enough to carry its ethical heart. He didn't waste time writing poetic essays. He built systems. He took the primitive logic of Aristotle and reshaped it into something new, what we now call propositional logic, the if-then engine that powers everything from computer code to courtroom argumentation. While others argued about definitions, Chrysippus built frameworks, mental blueprints, thought machines. According to Bertrand Russell, the Stoics developed a system of logic, propositional logic, that was more advanced than Aristotle's. Its loss set philosophy back by centuries. He trained his students using paradoxes, not as puzzles, but as sharpening stones. The famous liar's paradox, if I say I'm lying, am I telling the truth, wasn't a party trick. It was mental jujitsu. It forced students to see cracks in assumptions and think beyond linguistic traps. As Diogenes Laertius recorded, so great was his mastery of dialectic, many believed that if the gods debated, they would use the logic of Chrysippus. He didn't just answer the critics, he anticipated them. For every objection they raised, he had already written the counter-argument, and then another layer beneath that. He wrote furiously, over 700 books, averaging 500 lines a day, an intellectual machine. Modern philosopher Massimo Pigliucci notes, Chrysippus wasn't just trying to defend Stoicism, he wanted to make it unbreakable. He succeeded. Before Chrysippus, Stoicism was a castle made of wood. After him, it was a fortress of stone. With this new blade, logic as armor, Stoicism could now stand its ground. It could argue, defend, and teach, and most importantly, it could grow. But Chrysippus wasn't finished, because a shield is not enough. Stoicism needed a worldview, a cosmology, a map of the universe that explained not just how to live, but why. That's where we go next. Number 3, Blueprint of the Cosmos, Destiny, Fire, and Divine Order. After fortifying Stoicism with logic, Chrysippus turned his mind towards something even more ambitious. Not just how we should think, but why the universe exists the way it does. He wanted to answer the ultimate questions. Why are we here? What rules this world? And can virtue truly matter in a universe of chaos? For the Stoics, the answer was clear. The universe is not chaos. It is logos. Logos, the divine fire, the rational principle, the intelligence that breathes through everything. This wasn't mythology. It wasn't religion. It was a cosmic blueprint, a natural order where every event, good or bad, unfolds with purpose. According to Chrysippus, fate isn't a cold sentence passed down by an uncaring God. Fate is logic, extended across time. It's the consequence of cause and effect, rippling through the cosmos like threads in a perfectly woven fabric. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "Whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time." But this view was under attack. Critics laughed. If everything is fated, what's the point of trying? Why act ethically? Why make choices at all? Chrysippus answered with a story, a metaphor that still echoes across centuries. Imagine a dog tied to a moving cart. The cart represents fate. The dog has two options: to run alongside willingly or to be dragged, choking and bruised. Either way, the cart moves forward, but the experience, that's entirely up to the dog. This is Stoic freedom. We do not control the path, but we absolutely control how we walk it. As modern scholar Anthony A. Long explains, Chrysippus believed that destiny doesn't override our choices. Our character, our reason, our judgment, they are part of destiny itself. Our actions are how fate unfolds. It's a radical fusion of determinism and agency. You are not a puppet. You are a partner in the unfolding of the universe. And your role, no matter how small, is essential to the whole. Ryan Holiday echoes this today. The obstacle in your path, it is the path. This worldview changes everything. When something terrible happens, the question isn't why me? The question becomes, given this reality, what is the most virtuous response? That's the Stoic advantage. While others curse the river, we learn to row. While others get dragged by the cart, we learn to run beside it, free, proud, and undisturbed. And to understand how we build this internal power, how we face pain, fear, jealousy, and anger with composure, we need to enter the most dangerous battlefield of all, the human soul. Number 4. The anatomy of emotion, the war inside your mind. You've heard it before. Control your emotions, but no one ever tells you how. Not really. They tell you to meditate, breathe, count to 10. But when anger hits, when fear floods your chest, when jealousy burns, you already know, logic disappears. But what if I told you that your emotions aren't wild animals, that they're not forces beyond your control? According to Chrysippus, they're not even emotional. They're mistakes in thinking. That's right. In the Stoic system, anger isn't a flame, fear isn't a shadow, grief isn't a storm. They are errors of judgment. They arise not from the world, but from the way we interpret the world. Chrysippus laid it out in 2 steps. Step 1, you get hit with an impression. Something happens. Someone insults you, you lose money, you're rejected. This impression, called fantasia, is automatic, you can't stop it. But then comes step 2, you agree with a judgment about that impression. You tell yourself, that insult matters, that rejection defines me, this pain is unbearable. And that moment of agreement is when the emotion is born. As Donald Robertson explains in How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, Chrysippus identified emotions as beliefs, cognitive judgments we make about external events. Change the belief, and you change the emotion. This is the blueprint of cognitive behavioral therapy. Centuries before Freud, before Jung, before modern psychology even existed, Chrysippus had mapped the mind. And Epictetus, one of his greatest philosophical heirs, said it best. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Anger, then, is not an explosion, it's an interpretation. Fear is not protection, it's a prediction. Sadness is not mourning, it's agreement with the idea that something shouldn't have happened. And here's the liberating truth. If we created the judgment, we can change it. You don't need to suppress your emotions, you need to argue with them. You need to cross-examine your rage, challenge your fear, put your jealousy on the witness stand. Seneca practiced this often. He didn't just endure anger, he interrogated it. Seneca reminded us, ask yourself, has this offense truly harmed me? Has it diminished my virtue? The answer is always no. Modern-day Stoic thinkers like Massimo Pigliucci echo this cognitive method. You don't fight fire with fire, you fight irrational belief with reason. This is how Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes mental self-defense. It becomes your emotional immune system. You are not at the mercy of your emotions. You are the architect of your reactions. And Chrysippus handed you the blueprint 2,300 years ago. But now we must ask, how did all these ideas fit together? How did logic, cosmology, and emotional mastery become one unshakable system? That's what we explore next. Number 5. The Great Fusion. Why Stoicism is a living system, not a pick-and-choose philosophy. Modern self-help often works like a buffet. Take a little mindfulness from Buddhism, add some grit from Stoicism, mix in a productivity hack, and call it a day. But Stoicism, real Stoicism, was never meant to be picked apart. It's not a flavor, it's a full system, a living, breathing structure where every part supports the whole. And Chrysippus was the engineer who made it all click. He didn't just give Stoicism logic. He didn't just define fate. He didn't just decode emotion. He fused all three into something far greater, a philosophy that could be lived. To explain how everything fit together, the early Stoics used an image, probably invented or at least perfected by Chrysippus himself, an egg. The outer shell? Logic. The protective layer. Without it, the system collapses under scrutiny. The egg white? Physics. The understanding of the universe, its divine order, its structure, and the yolk at the center, ethics, the good life, the goal, the transformation of self. You can't separate them. You can't crack the shell and expect the yolk to hold. Virtue without logic is fantasy, reason without nature is blind, and ethics without both, empty. Another metaphor Chrysippus used was the field. Logic is the fence, physics is the soil and seeds, and ethics the fruit. John Sellers, a modern Stoic scholar, summarizes it like this. For the Stoics, philosophy wasn't a set of isolated subjects. It was a unified exercise in living according to nature, using reason to understand the cosmos and act with integrity. This is why Stoicism works. Not because it has clever quotes, not because it helps you feel calm during traffic, but because it's a coherent worldview, a fortress of reason built for a chaotic universe. Think about it. You understand the structure of reality, physics. You learn to think clearly and defend your beliefs, logic. Then and only then, you can act with virtue, free from delusion. This is what Chrysippus built. He didn't hand us scattered tools. He gave us a fully stocked mental armory. It's why Marcus Aurelius didn't fall apart during war. Why Epictetus could thrive as a slave. Why Seneca, facing death, chose dignity over despair. Because they weren't guessing. They were standing on structure, on system, on a blueprint that ran deeper than any one quote or book. But here's the twist. The man who gave us this fortress, the one who wrote hundreds of volumes to preserve it, his words are gone. That's what we face next. Number 6, 705 books, lost. How Chrysippus still shapes your mind today. Imagine this. You dedicate your life to building the most advanced system of thought the world has ever seen. You write over 705 books, not tweets, not articles, books. You defend your philosophy from extinction. You train generations of thinkers. You construct the very framework that will guide emperors, slaves, and modern therapists. And then, every single one of your books disappears. Not one survives. That's the tragedy of Chrysippus. We don't have his writings. We don't have his original arguments. All that remains are scattered fragments. Quotes preserved in the works of others, echoes of a voice the world never fully heard. It's as if Leonardo da Vinci had built entire cathedrals of thought, and we lost the blueprints. But here's the miracle. The cathedrals still stand, because Chrysippus didn't just write ideas. He embedded them into a system so powerful that even without his words, his logic lives on. Marcus Aurelius, he was walking the paths that Chrysippus paved. Seneca, using Chrysippus's psychological models disguised as personal reflections. Epictetus, teaching the dichotomy of control using the very logic Chrysippus once defended with blood and ink. According to Anthony A. Long, the Roman Stoics, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, weren't creating Stoicism. They were applying what Chrysippus had already designed centuries before. Even today, when a therapist uses cognitive behavioral therapy, when someone reminds you that you can't control what happens, only how you respond. When you choose discipline over distraction or presence over panic, you are walking in Chrysippus's shadow. Ryan Holiday calls these ancient ideas the operating system of life. But the one who wrote that code, we barely know his name. That's the paradox. The man who fortified Stoicism became a ghost. His work lives on, but his name fades. And maybe that's the most Stoic fate of all, because true greatness doesn't need credit, it needs impact. Chrysippus didn't chase fame, he chased clarity, and in doing so became the invisible foundation of every Stoic step you take. But before we close, there's one final truth we must explore. Why foundations matter more than appearances. Why the most powerful systems in life aren't always visible, but without them, everything collapses. That's our conclusion. Every time you quote a Stoic, you're standing on a forgotten foundation. You may not see it. You may never have heard his name before today, but Chrysippus is there, in the logic that holds your beliefs together, in the cosmic vision that helps you find meaning, in the mental discipline that keeps your emotions in check when life tries to tear you apart. He didn't wear a crown like Marcus Aurelius. He didn't write dramatic letters like Seneca. He didn't rise from slavery like Epictetus. But he gave them the tools to do all of that. He was the architect, the builder, the invisible force behind the Stoic fortress. And maybe that's the lesson. In a world obsessed with fame, recognition, and personal branding, the most valuable work might be the work no one sees, the systems we build, the habits we leave behind, the wisdom we pass on, even when our name fades. If this journey through the forgotten mind of Stoicism brought you value, let us know in the comments. Which part of Chrysippus's legacy impacted you the most? His logic, his vision of the universe, or his understanding of emotion? We'd love to hear how this ancient architect is helping shape your modern life. If you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. The Stoic Lighthouse is here to guide you toward peace and wisdom, one idea at a time. And in our next episode, we'll uncover the story of a man who stood face to face with Caesar himself and chose to die with honor rather than kneel in submission. You won't want to miss it. Remember this: the strength of any structure isn't in the beauty of its walls, but in the solidity of its foundation. See you in the next video.